Do you actually have to be on cocaine to be on this podcast?
It's a great day to be a Wildcat!
Cocaine.
Durfing?
What is up, everybody? You're listening to yet another edition of Cocaine Willie, the official K-State representative on the College Huddle. I am your commissioner, Bob Trollsby, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, the good chef, Andre Napier, and Fireball Matt Marchesini has returned from his trip to the Great White North. But tonight we are also joined by none other than Calvin from the CGA Tour, the College Huddle representative for the Oklahoma State Cowpokes, Cowboys, whatever you want to, Cowgirls, depending on the sport, as both teams look to bounce back from soul-crushing defeats in Week 4. Cal, how are you doing tonight?
Doing great. Thanks so much for having me on, Bob. Glad to talk to you too. Meet Fireball, Matt, and Chef as well. So, the best named podcast on the College Huddle Network. I think you guys are up for contention here, top 3 at least, if not 1.
There's been a lot of feedback, positive feedback from the rest of the huddle about the name alone. So I haven't gotten a ton of feedback on the actual podcast, but the name is a popular hit among the huddle. So, all right, before we get into the episode, we're going to do a quick plug for our 2 sponsors, Pat's Beef Jerky and Annie Mae's Parlor. But this beer crack is brought to you by Annie Mae's Parlor, located in North 12th Street in the heart of Aggieville, Manhattan, Kansas. Annie Mae's has been in business for 50 years and is an absolute must-visit destination in Aggieville on game days and school nights alike. Look, folks, Annie Mae's is far and away my favorite destination in Aggieville, and I always make a point to go visit my auntie every time I go back to the Little Apple. They feature a wide variety of craft cocktails, draft beers, and everything in between, along with entertainment like live music, comedy, and other events every single week. Check out their website at www.anniemays.com to get a list of their upcoming events, including tomorrow night on September 26th at 7 p.m. They are presenting Win a Gig Part 1, starring Atomic Aura, Lady Absinthe, Grey Garden, and Woodridge, in a competition for local bands to compete to win a headline show at Annie Mae's. As a musician and former band guy myself, definitely encourage you to go support your local music scene in addition to your local bars like Annie Mae's. But doing a ton of cool stuff all the time. Matt's shaking his head. Go visit your Annie in MHK at 616 North 12th Street in the heart of Aggieville. And be sure to tell them Cocaine Willie sent you. Hopefully we'll have a couple Pokes fans in there. They're welcome to go to Annie Mae's as well.
Yes, sir.
More than welcome to attend. And Pokes fans, tell them Cocaine Willie and the CGA Tour sent you. This show is also brought to you by Pat's Beef Jerky, located at 401 Main Street in Liebenthal, Kansas. Pat's Beef Jerky has been serving up the finest beef jerky in the Midwest for 34 years running, and they feature mouthwatering flavors like the classic beef jerky, the teriyaki beef jerky, and the savory beef pepper sticks. You all know it. There are 3 places where you can get yourself some Pat's Beef Jerky. You can pick it up in person at the Fridge Liquor Store if you're going to the game, if you're going to be tailgating, if you're an Oklahoma State fan making the trip up from Stillwater or Kansas or Nebraska, wherever you're coming from, you can pick it up in person at the Fridge Liquor Store. Last but not least, you can also get it shipped online. Oh, the second place, Matt's calling out the second place. You can get it at their original store in Liebenthal, Kansas, which is out in central/western Kansas, whatever you want to call it. And that's at 401 Main Street in Liebenthal. Last but not least, you can get your Pat's Beef Jerky online at www.patsbeefjerky.com. That's it, guys. Use the promo code CATS at checkout. You'll get 10% off your next order. So go use the promo code. They've shipped to all 50 states this year, so they're doing great stuff over at Pat's Beef Jerky. But that's going to do it for the ad reads. Cal, before we get into the preview this week, we would love for you to we're going to hand you the mic. We're going to hand you the torch, do a little candle pass real quick and give you an opportunity to tell the folks who are listening to Cocaine Willie a little bit more about your story with Oklahoma State as a fan, how you got into podcasting, how you got into doing the CGA Tour and all that other stuff.
Yeah, thanks so much. I might have to clip this out for my my own intro for my own YouTube. Got the comment today of who are you on one of the recent podcasts. So now I got to answer the question, of course. But I'm a lifelong OSU fan. When my parents got divorced when I was in like first grade, my dad took me to every single OSU football game after that, and been going since. Graduated in 6 wonderful years at Oklahoma State University. Did get 3 degrees, so it all balances out real well there. But was 24 when I graduated, and really worked for Oklahoma State Athletics for 4 years. Was the mic guy down the court and saying, "Hey, we've got Bob or Matt or Chef here shooting half court contests for a little bit." So had a lot of fun doing that type of stuff, and then after graduating from Oklahoma State, still staying in podcasting. Ran the Oklahoma State Podcasting Network for the student newspaper as well too when I was a student, but then afterwards had to kind of branch out, do a whole podcast thing on my own. That's hence the CGA tour, the Calvin Glenn Alexander tour, and besides the acronym being somewhat synonymous to the Chinese Golf Association, we've really got no other people's Googling the same things. So it's been great, and still podcasting here six almost 7 years later. So thanks for having me on.
And Matt, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say we have something in common as a podcast name that people aren't Googling. So, if they're Googling Cocaine Willie and they're not K-State affiliated, the FBI is probably on their asses. So,
also true.
A little dark web stuff going on there.
Yeah.
I gotcha. Yeah.
Potentially.
Silk Road.
Oh, God. So, Cal, real quick question as well. So you're also the host of the Big 12 Huddle show for the College Huddle as well. Want to give you a chance to plug that. But curious also, from your perspective as a fellow OG Big 8 fan like the three of us are, what's it like for you seeing this current, I guess, 5.0? I think I heard it referred to today. I guess technically it is Big 12 5.0 or Big 8 5.0. As we near the midway point of what was one of the most highly anticipated CFB seasons in history. I guess I'm just curious, what do you think of this current iteration of the Big 12, having been, sitting on the sidelines of Oklahoma State athletics and watching this team through that evolution of conference realignment?
I got to say, when OU and Texas announced they were leaving, that immediately was like, oh, how will this affect little brother Oklahoma State from the Bedlam series? And every single person I know who's an OSU fan is like, goodbye and good riddance. Because if you're an OU fan, you're kind of like a fan when you want to be. Every single OU fan I know, and I don't know if this rings true for you guys for maybe some KU spew of KU basketball. When they're good, you've got all of a sudden it's packed arenas, selling out. It's the craziest thing ever. But if they have a down year or two, oh, the sky is falling. Couldn't believe what happened, and everything must suck. Oh, we lost to you guys? Yeah, it was a down year, man. We really didn't have it going. It's like we had a Heisman Trophy winner at quarterback, so I don't really know what you're doing there. I mean, it's always like, well, but Lincoln Riley was leaving the next morning. Okay, wouldn't he want his legacy to be going out with a win? I don't understand the thought process there. So everything for me is like, hey, been referred to as little brother by OU fans. And in football, they have us dead to rights there. Sure. Texas, if you check back the last decade, hey, we beat you at your place, we beat you at our place. We beat you straight up and down the last decade, 15 years, really. I mean, honestly, since 08, we've had Texas's number. So them leaving, it's not a huge shock. They beat us the final time in Big 12, but OU, we won the Bedlam record against, and when they're gone, I think this opens up a whole new Big 12. I think it opens up a new Big 12 for Oklahoma State fans who are really excited about how good could this football program be if kind of the arch rival of Mike Gundy, because just if you watch Bedlam games, you know this. Oklahoma State plays differently in Bedlam. Well, I get to at the same time versus how he plays in the rest of the season. So it's just he kind of gets, kind of clenches up a little bit and plays from a more conservative play style. So it's one of those things where, like, I'm glad OU's gone because now I feel like, man, maybe the Utah games is where we're going to have to go into a shell and be looking around like, okay, can we not run our normal stuff? But, if it's not OU anymore, it's probably somebody. But it's also nice to have a chance to kind of go, hey, you know what? Like, NIL doesn't run OSU. I don't think it really runs the Big 12 all that much. And I think every team is pretty much leveled out in NIL stuff comparatively. Certain sports, certain teams, but I mean, that's kind of my deal here. It's like Big 12 huddle. We're trying to talk K-State. We're trying to talk KU. We're trying to talk about, like, why is KU playing at the Chiefs Stadium? Why would you ever want to do that? Because then all of a sudden you have a bunch of Mizzou fans showing up, right? Like, it's in Missouri. And then you also have all the stuff of like, hey, you know what? There's, some random stuff. Where were all the Colorado fans 2 years ago? Oh, you're a Deion Sanders fan. Can't wait until he's an NFL head coach, and then they have no fans again. So I'm just kind of, we're riding the waves here, see how it works out. Real glad we don't have like South Florida in the conference. But the Coast Big 12 huddle is the not geographically inclined or declined, I guess you should say, or geographically challenged UCF fans who actually know where their school is located in the state. And that's Roger Phipps with the United Ones, and I co-host the Big 12 huddle every Wednesday. It's a good deal. We enjoy it. We're actually recording right now after this one, so stay tuned later tonight.
All right, well, let's get into talking about, obviously, Oklahoma State while you're here. And for a lot of us, we know Mike Gundy, known him for a long time. He's been with the program for 20 seasons, which is crazy to think about, that he, has coached there for that long. He's the longest tenured football coach at Oklahoma State by quite a number of seasons at this point. And comes off a really great 2023 season, making it to the Big 12 championship game with seventh-year quarterback Alan Bowman. You have Ollie Gordon, who had quite a season last year, and a lot of preseason projections of him being, one of the top or the top running back in the country. So really, from the outside, you would expect that Oklahoma State's in the running to at least, get 9-10 wins this season at least. Now, last weekend, similarly to us, hosting, you're hosting Utah. Cam Rising didn't play, and it just kind of was a little bit of a dud of a game at home at Boone Pickens Stadium. So give us a little bit of insight from the fan perspective. How are people feeling after the loss against Utah? And are we still looking ahead that the season has potential to be a Big 12 champion by the end of it?
I think right after the game was over, every single Oklahoma State fan is like, the sky's falling. How do we not play better? I mean, we gave up so many rushing yards on the ground, but we held them to 22 points. A Big 12 team at your home stadium holding a team to 22 points, you should really have enough points to win. It just also sucks that it was their like 18-year-old freshman quarterback too. It wasn't even Cam Rising. And I was thinking about the game like at halftime. I was going, you know what? Halftime, coming out of half, we're only down 10. What if all of a sudden we just kind of just go off? We just have more energy. We're a better second half team, yada, yada, all type of good stuff. And then it's, hey, we get to play, if I'm really scripting out how the season works in my head, then we get to play Utah for the rematch in the Big 12 championship with Cam Rising healthy, and everyone's like, okay, now it's a neutral side. It's this big glammed up deal. But following the game, the way that we ended the game by scoring a lot really quickly at the end and seemingly having some type of a chance. I mean, if we get that onside kick, they weren't stopping us for 2 straight possessions and 2 straight extra points, or 2-point conversions. So who knows? But then again, the whole rest of the game, where was our offense? Why did Utah just let up at the end? Seems like they strolled into the end zone and then their mind strolled out of the game. And that was kind of it. They just weren't really even thinking about it. So all these OSU fans, including myself here, I think are going, sky is falling. Woe is us. Why is our offense so bad all of a sudden? Why is our Heisman Trophy guy getting no help from the offensive line, whose average age is like 23, almost 24? Why is the offensive line that we had last year not really showing up the same way this year? What's the big difference? And why can we not figure out a way to get Ollie Gordon the ball? However we get it to him. And a lot of it's on offensive play calling. So to come back and answer your question, I think a lot of OSU fans are like, if we don't beat K-State, it's all of a sudden looking real like, whoa, hang on a second. The only good win we have on the season is a double overtime win against Arkansas, where they luck to not get on their way. Like they were not lucky to end the game. A muff punt basically changes the game there against Arkansas, and that's how we won. And that's the best one we have on our season. So I think this weekend it'll tell every Oklahoma State fan, like, okay, if we can at least run with you guys, at least stay, somewhat similar, and we only lose by the point spread of, I think, 5.5 is what I saw. Then I think we're like, all right, you know what? 2 losses. Last year we lost 4 games. Granted, one was a Big 12 championship game, so 3 losses really. Anything's possible, because a year ago right now, Oklahoma State was 2-2, and we're heading in to actually play K-State at home. It was a night game. So sorry, it was a night game, guys. But that being said, I think every Oklahoma State fan could have their whole minds flipped again by playing K-State on the 5th game of the year, 2 years in a row, and go, well, actually, we're pretty good. We got this whole thing under control. We just had to figure out what we need to do zone blocking wise, or it was a simple fix. But I could also see us losing to you guys this weekend, and then it being like, okay, fire our offensive coordinator today, because just every Oklahoma State fan has seen this same kind of rhythm and roll of like, Gundy's at the helm, he wins close games, but if something's not going right, or we're up creek without a paddle, even when we're at home, we gave up so many rushing yards this past weekend, it's insane. And I don't know if it makes sense to anyone else. They have a freshman quarterback they're playing. They're probably going to run the ball, right? You would think they're going to run the ball. You would think they're not going to air it out. You probably let them air it out. And still, we gave up over 250 yards with them running the ball at home. I know we held them to 22 points, but 4 of 5 on 4th down conversion. That's what Utah's success rate was. I keep going with the stats and stuff here. It just is one of those things that was very aggravating to watch, definitely in person. And I think you guys have a pretty decent game plan after seeing us play Utah last week too. I mean, it's really just, hey, if Alan Bowman can figure it out, go for it. But if he can't figure it out, then we're going to make sure you can't run the ball. I mean, Ollie Gordon had 11 rushes last week. He touched the ball less than 15 times total. He's like the best player by far on the roster. So something's got to change. Well, very excited about this weekend on how this team looks optimistically for the rest of the year, because this is also kind of like the year for us to put it all together. You know, we're kind of the program that'll like rebuild a little bit, not necessarily reload as quickly. Seems like you guys got a running quarterback who can run the ball, at the helm, backup every 5 seconds. Maybe he has a bad game or two here every so often, but like, we're I wouldn't say we're blessed in that quarterback category as of recent memory.
Well, we'll talk about the offense right now, because you brought up a lot of points in that last question. Casey Dunn, that's the guy that's calling the shots, and you just mentioned a little bit in that diatribe right there about maybe he's got to go. And there's the stats, we could go through all that stuff, and it's not important, because really you've got, like you said, possibly the best running back in the country, and an offensive line that's supposed to be getting it done, but it's not getting it done. Is it on Casey Dunn that all this is happening? And what is Mike Gundy's role in this offense to maybe right the ship somehow?
I think it's a bit of both. I think really Dunn tried to get in his bag, run some plays. He ran one play in the game last weekend where it was three receivers in motion, and then it was a wide receiver screen. I mean, and that's all it was. Doing some more creative things and stuff didn't work out. So, and then Gundy in the press conference after the game, I think on Monday, he said, "You know what? Should have gone with my grandma's philosophy of if it's working, why do anything else? If it's working, keep it going." We were in a good place, should have kept running them. And I don't know, because I feel like Dunn is kind of been the guy to come up with some stuff. But then again, everyone wants him gone because Gundy's brought so much success to the program. How can you want Gundy to leave? It can't be Gundy's fault. He's brought so much success. And then the previous offensive coordinators who have come through Oklahoma State and then left, I've generally left for a better deal overall for them personally, whether it be just that's kind of the bag of goods were sold and Gundy didn't like them a lot, or they actually did move on to a good spot. So I'm hesitant to say Dunn's got to go, because last year it seemed like all of a sudden out of nowhere, this old quarterback and running back out of the backfield made it work, like no other. It seems like our defense needs to really kind of lock in and stop the running game. That's what I'm worried about most with you guys is your running game overall,
Yeah, we will. I'm curious to see how that running game translates to Saturday as well, because I don't know what happened last weekend. Last weekend was kind of just a very strange night, I think, for us across the board. But I do want to get to the very old quarterback, Alan Bowman. He's got 200 plus yards in all 4 games so far this season. So Casey Dunn's doing something to dial up the offense for him. He's got 10 touchdowns, 4 interceptions. He's only been sacked once, so that speaks a lot to your accolades for the offensive line being an older unit. Going into halftime of the Utah game, he was 8 for 22, however, for only 89 yards, which for him is not great, going back through his track record. And he got benched for Garrett Rangel. So it was weird seeing Garrett Rangel. I was kind of watching from afar, watching the game in between being in different places in Atlanta for the Chiefs-Falcons game. But I remember looking up and I saw Garrett Rangel. I'm like, why is Garrett Rangel in? Did Alan Bowman get hurt? No, just turns out he got benched for a series and then they brought him back in. What exactly happened there? And Gundy's already stated Bowman's the guy. He's going to be the guy for this weekend. He's backed him up. But what version of Bowman do you think we're going to see? So a little bit of a two-pronged question there.
Yeah, on the first part, it appears that Gundy said Bowman did not get injured. It was just poor quarterback play. He was thrown out of the pocket. So what I hope is that Utah's defensive line did something we didn't see coming normally, and we had no way of stopping it somehow, some way. Our offensive line looked horrific last game. Could not say more about it. So I hope it was just the offensive line that tripped up Bowman. All stuff that he can do really well is processing, have a little bit of time in the pocket, have some patience, and then he can put a little bit of zip on the ball, but he's throwing a lot of deep passes with some accuracy, but it's really, does he have touch? And he just did not have touch. Like you said, 8 of 22 in the first half. And then we put in Rangel as the backup. He plays the whole third quarter and some of the fourth quarter. And I got to say, props to the guy for sticking around the program because something horrible did happen to Bowman. I'd rather have him in than I think a redshirt sophomore, but I still would rather see what the redshirt sophomore is about at this point. He's been so all through fall camp. It's, hey, Zane Flores this, Zane Flores that. He was going to start over Dylan Raiola at Nebraska if Matt Rhule had gotten his wishes. So there's stuff like that. It's like, okay, maybe this kid's crazy good. Matt Rhule is trying to really whisk him away. Now, that might have not been when Dylan was fully committed to Nebraska or not. So do you want to have that in there too? But apparently this kid's like the next greatest thing. So Rangel is just not the guy. He was 3 of 11. I don't know why we were passing the ball so much with the backup quarterback either. He has one play where the halfback read, he keeps it, immediately has to go down because there's defenders right there. Our offensive line just was not helping him out at all when it was the backup. Weren't helping out Bowman either, making sure he looked good in the pocket. I'm curious what you guys think of your defensive line as comparatively to most years, because I think that could be one of the big storylines of this game going forward is really offensive defensive lines. Against Arkansas, our offensive line looked just bad for a while. And then at some point, it started looking better when we got back in the game. And then our defensive line looked really bad. And then looked like we could stop Arkansas for a little bit. And their scrambling quarterback, Taylon Green, there wasn't able to do that much. So I'm curious what you guys think about your kind of offensive defensive line too. I think that could indicate how good of success we have as an Oklahoma State offense. Because if we're not throwing the ball, then you guys will put eight in the box and then it's over. That's what Utah did to us last week. And that seemed to be it, especially if we're not going to throw Ollie Gordon some swing routes or something like that either, which I don't think we even tried to do that maybe more than once this past weekend.
Well, talking about Ollie Gordon, defenses have limited him to more than what we probably expected. Past 3 games, less than 50 yards rushing in each of those games. Overall this season, 258 yards and 73 carries. So only 3.5 yards a carry, 4 touchdowns. But the past 2 games has not gone into the end zone. So give us your perspective. What are teams doing defensively to limit Ollie? And would you say that has helped the passing game at all, or is it hindering the Cowboys just by not allowing a more balanced approach on offense?
I think it's just really hindering everything we do, because everyone knows coming into this season, it's going to be Ollie Gordon. It's going to be Ollie Gordon, this highly touted offensive line. And as an Oklahoma State fan, offensive line's been a sore subject for us for quite some time. We lost Joe Wickline to Texas, our offensive line coach, a while back. I'm talking a decade plus ago. And since then, it's been a sore subject, I'd say, of coaching up our offensive line, having some steady guys there. We've had a couple of draft picks, every so often, but the draft picks we have is like Tevin Jenkins for the Bears, and I don't think anyone's talking up the Chicago Bears offensive line anytime soon. So they're not like offensive linemen that I'm like, oh my gosh, yeah, it's Russell Okung. Well, that was 2008. So like, it's just we've had a long time since then where it's just not great, and that is directly contributing to how good Ollie Gordon is when we're not trying to do anything super creative with him. I mean, the Tulsa game, he doesn't have a rushing touchdown. Um, the and we put up 45 points. Like our backup running back did. So theoretically, Ollie Gordon could have definitely had a rushing touchdown. You know, I mean, like it's not like the stat that we have going right now is this is the second is if you have 2 games in a row of Ollie Gordon not having a rushing touchdown, then you lose that second game. Last year, same deal. But at the same point, like Sessi, our backup, he didn't have to be in for that one play. We just need to do some. We just need to keep trying stuff. I would really hope that Gundy and Dunn get into their gadget book. Their hey, K-State hasn't scouted this, hasn't seen this, and that Alan Bowman will also like learn how to read cover one defenses because that was the key thing he said for Monday. Is Utah had a really good safety over top, and we have not practiced against cover one defenses. Now, I am not the football guy here, to be clear. I did not play high school football. I do not know this well enough to talk about it more than what I'm saying. But if Utah has never ran a cover one defense and then throws it out against Oklahoma State in the game, you know what? No harm, no foul. Coaching staff's doing their thing. They've never seen Utah run a cover one or haven't in the past 15 games. All right. You know what? Threw Bowman off. Cool. You know, I'll live with it, move on. But I would think cover one's a pretty popular defense to run. It seems like a name that I've heard several times before, just following the sport for so long now. So there's several things that really just are head scratchers in my mind here heading into this Saturday's game.
You mentioned gadget plays and what Dunn can get into his bag doing, and going against cover one defenses. That's just basic coverage right there. But guys that can attack that, my guy Brennan Presley. I mean, he's a Kansas boy. No, he's Oklahoma boy. He's from
Tulsa.
Yeah, from Tulsa. I can't remember the exact high school. Maybe Beck, some with a B. I'm not sure.
Bixby. But yeah.
Bixby. Getting way off topic. Gloating over my boy Brennan Presley on my fantasy team, by the way. He's doing work this season. How can they get, if they're not going to get Ollie Gordon involved? I mean, they got to get somebody like Brennan Presley involved. Stribling, dog. Rashad Owens, he looked like a tight end. He's absolutely massive. Why are we not seeing these guys all over Sports Center?
I mean, it's a great question. It seems like really for whatever reason, Bowman did not have the touch. He just didn't have the playmaking ability. He was rolling out of the pocket. He was going to look like, he's going to like vintage, Joe Montana or Steve Young or, Dak Prescott, whatever, right? Rolling out of the pocket, looking smooth, Joe Cool. But he just didn't have the touch. There's several plays where like our wide receivers would barely be able to get a hand on it or something and wouldn't have it. There's one play that I could really harp on Rashad Owens about where he basically gets just shoved out of bounds and then he doesn't even continue on with the route. And the ball was thrown to him. Just he wasn't ever close to it, by the time he got down there. And I don't know whose fault that is. So I'm not trying to kid a college kid. To your point, he actually used to play tight end. Rashad Owens was a tight end. He's been an Oklahoma State like lifer with this team. He's played. I mean, he's been with Oklahoma State for forever. I mean, I'd be shocked if he wasn't like a 6th year as well too, just because I think he's medical and redshirted at some point. So he's one of those guys where you would figure he's a veteran. He's going to make the catches. Bowman puts one a little bit out of reach. He's going to go get that ball. Stribling's one heck of an athlete. He is one of the best, I'd say, OSU photos of the year of like a toe drag on the sidelines. It was like a 4-yard gain, but Bowman put it right in a spot. It was the opening week game against South Dakota State, and Stribling's just dragging up that turf. You can see it flying up with one foot. And it's a great photo. But like Presley's the other guy too. Like Presley was targeted a bunch. He caught the ball more than 10 times. He was the only receiver we had catch the ball more than 10 times the past week, if I remember correctly. So we really have a lot of these playmakers, all these guys. Just I guess don't have an offensive line to protect them, and then our quarterback just kind of suffers from not being able to be strong enough in the pocket to take a hit, or has a little bit of happy feet, whatever happens. If Cam Rising had played, I think that would have been the true image of how different 2 7-year pocket passing quarterbacks could look. Because you got Bowman, who can play like First half against Arkansas, I would love to have him benched, but then second half, I'm glad he was our quarterback. We ended up winning the game. We actually covered the spread in some areas. We won by 8. But then again, you have the game like this against Utah, and I'm like, hasn't this guy been playing football for like longer than some of these guys, at OSU have been alive? Like, what are we doing here? I mean, there's just the inconsistency with the 7-year quarterback is something I did not anticipate at all. Like this, So where's the Alan Bowman who played K-State last year, who had his first full start coming in he was announced the starter and then goes up 29-21, right? And I mean, beats you guys. Great. It was at home. So who knows what happens this weekend? But like the last game against Utah was also at home. You'd figure, he'd be able to pull that one out too. I mean, that'd be the first time Oklahoma State won a conference home game to kick off the year. Or first time we won the conference opener, I should say, in 2 years, because we lost to Iowa State as well with Bowman as quarterback. So it's really just very excited for Saturday, looking forward to it. But like all of the signs point to, well, maybe Bowman was really, really the weak link of this team. And your quarterback's the weak link. Like it can just mean everything else doesn't work as it should.
That's for sure. I want to do really quick pivot over to defense since we are kind of at the halfway mark. So I'm going to throw some stats at you and I'm going to try to explain them as best I can. But I was looking at the matchup on collegefootballinsiders.com, which is run by Parker Fleming, formerly CFB Graphs. Stats of War on Twitter. Love Parker Fleming. He's been on the show a couple of times and does a great job with the stat stuff. But I feel like based on his assessment of Oklahoma State, it feels like, okay, the offense is kind of in that 40 to 50 in the country mark when you look at a lot of the efficiency stats. The defense similarly is at the 46th mark in the nation when you look at the efficiency metrics. So both offense and defense kind of, you're getting about the same level of difficulty there when you're looking at the offense and the defense for Oklahoma State when you measure EPA per play. They're just outside of kind of that top third in all of FBS. But another interesting stat here is that Oklahoma State right now is 113th in ECHL rate, which according to Parker Fleming is how frequently your defense allows a big play touchdown or a first down inside of the 40 on any given drive. So on 54% of drives, they're allowing a big play touchdown or first down within the 40. Where Oklahoma State's defense has shined, though, is in limiting the points allowed off of those big plays. So they've forced field goals instead of allowing touchdowns. They've also forced a field goal that got missed last week against Utah when in both of those drives, an example of this, Isaac Wilson ran for 48 yards in the third quarter to get to the Oklahoma State 22-yard line. That set up Oklahoma State stepped up and forces what ended up being a missed field goal. And then another example is there was a 62-yard Micah Bernard run by Utah against the Pokes in the third quarter as well that got the ball to the Oklahoma State 27-yard line. But again, the defense stepped up. They forced a 38-yard field goal, and they're limiting the amount of points that Utah is able to get on those drives where they're getting big plays. So it's just kind of a weird thing to think about when you like they're giving up massive chunk yards, massive chunk plays to offenses, but they're then stepping up when it matters. And it's kind of bend but don't break. If you look at like, if there's a stat for bend but don't break, I guess that might be it. But I'm just curious. I mean, what are the Pokes doing well when teams get to that spot on the field, kind of within the 40 of your own defense? And what are they doing to where they're able to step up and stop those offenses and limit the amount of points that they're getting on those drives?
Yeah, I want to start by answering your question by talking about our linebackers, and I think that really could be the success area. I saw a comment earlier, I think it was from Damon, asking about our linebackers' health. Colin Oliver supposedly will be without this. We will not have him at this game either. I mean, his health is maybe November, December type of guy. He's one of those guys who I could see being drafted if he was fully healthy and had a great year. At this point, maybe he'll medical register and come back. I don't know, because his name won't be around all that. But Nick Martin is the guy who's getting a ton of publicity, All-American type of guy, all Big 12 first team. And then you've also got a guy who's Trey Rucker, who is leading OSU in amount of tackles, and he's an incredible kind of linebacker safety as well. And then Oklahoma State's highest recruit on the defensive side of the ball ever is also on the team, and it's Kendall Daniels. He doesn't get talked about a ton, but he's kind of that also linebacker safety hybrid. And seeing both those guys, they made a very crucial play, last week where they actually like kind of kept the score low, I guess I should say, where both of them just blitz the quarterback, delay blitz, and one of them gets just absolutely stuffed. I think it was Nick Martin gets absolutely just shoved right by the center, picks him up, no questions. But then, of course, Nick Martin, is gone. But then Kendall Daniels gets the quarterback for Utah. The more we can do things like that is really what helps out. And I do think our corners and our safeties, they're not great at playing press coverage, but they're definitely good at reading some routes, making some plays on the ball. We definitely play a lot more conservative defense. And also I think too is that our defense probably looks a little bit different than other defenses. And then again, this is something that I'm maybe guessing at more than just knowing, but I feel strong in knowing that our defense looks different because our defense coordinator, this is his second year. He's now the full defensive coordinator. Last year's the co-defensive, and he's from like D2 football. And he was the guy Gundy scouted, Brian Ardo, moved to Oklahoma State. Now, is he Jim Knowles? No. Jim Knowles left for Ohio State and is a great defense coordinator, et cetera, and he's getting paid more than most head coaches. So props to Ohio State for getting him. But would love to have him back at that point. But that being said, Brian Ardo could be throwing out some different schemes, different stuff here where we're okay with loud chunk plays. South Dakota State put up a lot of chunk plays on us. Tulsa, when they were having their kind of 3 different quarterbacks in the game, put up a couple plays that I'm like, Tulsa, I don't think is going to make a bowl game. They're guys who are also on the College Huddle Network, the Golden Hurricast. They didn't think they're making a bowl game. They just lost to Arkansas State, and yet they still were putting up big chunk plays on us, but they scored 10 points the whole game. We shut them out for most of the game. So, like, I think when the field gets condensed, when it gets smaller, that's when it's like, okay, we've got athletes, and we've got athletes who can really move as a very fast team. But so far, it just has not proven us. We haven't been a physical team. We've allowed a lot of run chunk plays. I mean, Utah was 4 of 5 on 4th down. And sorry to bring that up again because it kind of hurts me saying that. But it's just one of those things that, like, man, I really wish we were better on defense at some of these chunk plays. But I'll take it that we have the bend don't break mentality, at least because we're 3-1. I mean, the sky is not like in the ground. Last year we were 2-2 at the same point, and it was like, woe is me, nothing good can happen, and we still won 10 games. So, I don't want to be that guy who's like screaming chicken little here because I feel like we could lose to you guys, then still be 3-2, still be on track to make a bowl game. The rest of the opponents on our schedule after you guys, honestly, our teams coming into the season, I didn't expect them to do really much of anything. And yeah, Arizona State's had a couple moments here and there. Colorado, I'm sure, will have a couple more moments as well, too. They're on a schedule. BYU now looks, playing you guys, no offense, but they look nasty, much worse than I thought they would. So not looking forward to going to Provo at all later on this year. But, like, anything can happen. We beat OU last year, and when they have the maybe Heisman Trophy winner and Dylan Gabriel on their team last year, who now is, of course, at Oregon. But this team can show up. It's like, which version of the team are we going to get week to week? And we cannot afford to start slow again. That's one thing I know for sure.
I'm not going to lie. That stat, when I saw that really stood out to me. Like, K-State can get big chunk yardage from guys like Dylan Edwards and Avery Johnson. But if we're not able to convert when we get to the other side of the 40, I mean, it's going to be BYU all over again. And it's going to be, hey, we can't, nothing's happening once we get to that side of the field. So that's probably the thing. If I had a key to victory for Oklahoma State, that would be what it is. But Chef, I want you to dip into the DL here.
Don't be a traitor and start giving away inside secrets, dude. Don't do that. I mentally can't handle you being a poke right now.
You can't mentally handle it either. I'm not.
But there's 2 pokes that I do want to talk about on that D line. You were talking about athletes and talking about you might need to be more physical, but these 2 guys, Obi, let me try to get this name. This is my first time saying it. Obi Eziegbo?
Let's go with it. Let's keep going.
Okay, and then Xavier Ross.
Sounds better than what I've said it. I've made 30 passes at it, and that's not bad.
1.5 sacks each. I mean, these are 2 rush ends that are really good. I mean, traditionally, Oklahoma State has always had pretty good defensive ends. Even the one that's playing for OU right now, we're not going to talk about him.
Well,
But
if he had been healthy, we would have loved to keep him around, but he's not healthy whenever he was playing for us, and then he trashes the program after he leaves, and then we beat him the one time that, he's healthy enough for us to play each other. So,
yeah, that
see you,
bastard.
Trace.
Yeah, get him out of here. But let's talk about those two guys, and then maybe what's going on with the interior of that defensive line.
Yeah, so what's funny enough is that Colin Clay is one of our defensive tackles, and he transferred in from Arkansas. So when he got to play against his former team, I'm sure he was fired up, and he's played all right. I mean, to me, like, our defensive ends are decent, but how did we let a team run 250 plus yards at us at home with the backup quarterback? Like, that's the one just real main concern. I just can't get over that fact. Like, once I learned that, yeah, we held them to 5 of 8. They were 5 of 18 on third down. Like, if you put that stat together with any other OSU staff from this past weekend of, like, well, there's also this. They had more turnovers than we did, etc. Like, okay, we probably won the game. But then you will throw in some other stats of, well, Utah had the ball for 44 plus minutes, or I think it was 43, excuse me. And then of course they're, ran it for 250 yards. So our defensive ends are not getting to them. They seem to be able to run up the middle just fine. I'm really worried about our defensive tackles. Colin Clay is one of them. But to your point, Nick Martin, Trey Rucker, and Obi, I'll leave it there, are some of the great guys we've got on this defense. I mean, Obi Ezibia, he is a transfer in from also Shippensburg, from where, no, I'm saying it wrong, from Gannon University, excuse me, where also our defensive coordinator came in from. And apparently he had the quote, if you guys heard Gundy's press conferences, sometimes the quotes flare up national media wise, sometimes they don't. But he said he's really cheap. That's the guy he was talking about because he came in from a D2 school. So some of these guys, like, we do find hidden gems in the rough. James Washington is the most notable example because he was a 2-star guy, ended up getting drafted in the 3rd round. But there's just a lot of, like, hey, our defensive line should be getting a lot of push. Our defensive line's really good. Yeah, our maybe best defensive end in Colin Oliver is definitely out for this game. But the rest of our guys are pretty darn good. Corey Black's pretty veteran corner. We've also got on the outside too as well. We've got some guys around. I just the Utah game really throws me for a loop because until then I thought our defense was playing all right. Holding Arkansas to 31 when they put up more than that against Auburn, or more than that against Auburn. It's all right. Yeah, I can live with that. That's respectable enough. 31 double overtime too. Like, all right, moving on. Holding South Dakota State, who I didn't think would be much at all, honestly, to under 25, especially when there was a garbage time touchdown there. That's all right. That's not bad. Tulsa almost shut him out. Really should have, honestly. That's pretty good. But the Utah game really throws me for a loop because they put up 22 points. That's not a big enough number to win in the Big 12 most days, but it's definitely enough rushing yards to win in the Big 12 for sure. So we've got some head scratching stuff going on. I'm really worried about how Avery's going to be, running all over us. Run pass option. Like, our RPO might have been something that Gundy explained fully in a press conference to teach all OSU fans about, but I think we're really going to learn a lot about it this weekend with Avery Johnson, under center.
So kind of want to do a little bit of a hashtag old friend alert, but talking about the linebacker position, we as K-State fans are pretty familiar with your linebacker coach, Joe Bob Clements, who is with Bill Snyder for a long time and, has history at K-State, et cetera. The linebacker position is one that Oklahoma State has had some very strong linebackers come out of the program. I mean, very recently, a guy like Malcolm Rodriguez. So yeah, you talked a little bit about, there's been some injuries at linebacker, especially this year, but, with Joe Bob there, what has that development for that position been like since he's been there? And, are people still happy that he's part of the coaching staff?
Definitely. I mean, we seem to have, running back transfer out, and then also another guy steps up. Most recent example of that is Mason Cobb. He transferred out to USC, left the same year Lincoln Riley did, granted both from the state of Oklahoma, not from the same team, of course. And Mason Cobb doesn't look like he did at Oklahoma State. Doesn't look like the same type of guy. Doesn't look like the same type of physical, stopper of the ball. And Nick Martin was not a name of a guy that I thought. I'll say Nick Martin was not a household name when he came in. I mean, Colin Oliver only was because he's from the same area of Oklahoma City that I'm kind of from. And I mean, we seem to have some guys. Kendall Daniels is a really fast dude, but he's not fast enough to play safety. He's a little bit too big. But he's been kind of coached up as linebacker. It always seems like we've got a guy at linebacker. I mean, Emmanuel Ogbah is another NFL guy who played DN linebacker kind of hybrid. He's probably an edge guy. At the end of the day, and I'm trying to remember some other ones here just off the top of my head, but really love Joe Bob. I mean, he was the co-defensive coordinator last year with Nardo when Nardo was still co-defensive. And rightfully so. He's been with the program now for a long time. Really happy to have him on staff, of course.
Chef, you want to round us out here with a little DB action?
Oh, you want to do the DBs? I mean, we could do the DBs. Why not? You talked about the corners and not being able to press and reading zone. I don't know what to think about Avery. He's throwing into coverage right in the middle of the field, not seeing DBs right in the middle of it. So it could be hit or miss either way for me with how your DBs play. But give me a rundown. Daniels, obviously, I love him on College Football 25. Dreads swinging. He looks really good. Aesthetically, one of my top favorites. But give me a rundown of all those other DBs because Are you rodding a 4.25? What's this DB situation looking like?
I gotta say, I mean, I gotta look up the roster a little bit because honestly, you know what? We're good at DB, but like Corey Black's the household name, who's like the corner. Jabbar Muhammad transferred away like now I think it's 3 seasons ago. He's played for Washington and now Oregon. He was pretty darn good DB for us, but of course he's gone. I mean, Cam Smith has had an interception this year so far. He definitely has an eye for the ball. I think there's a couple other Oklahoma State guys who I'd be like, all right, Kendall Daniels can drop in coverage a little bit too, place them on the tight ends. There's just there's some guys where I'm like, all right, you know what, like they're really good, and then there's also some stuff where I'm like, man, they keep picking on 10. Who the heck is number 10? And it like makes me look up his name, and I'm like, all right, Cale Smith. Who is it? I mean, that was the whole Arkansas game. So I wouldn't say DB is our strongest position overall by far and away, but and we've got a bunch of guys who are names Oklahoma State fans have heard of for at least a year or two who are actually seeing some big playing time. Cameron Epps is a safety for us. He's a sophomore. He's starting, I mean, every single game, and he plays really, really well too. Hopefully he stays around with the program for, until he graduates. Maybe he can make it all 7 years. Who knows? So it'll be a good deal on the DB side, but we're really excited about our linebackers overall. I think that's the strength we have on the defensive side of it. I don't think it's in our defensive line, and I don't think it's in our DBs. I think overall, like the strength of this Oklahoma State team is with Joe Bob and with the linebackers.
Yeah, I guess I'll take the last question. So give us just for this game, what's Oklahoma State's biggest advantage, and what do you think their biggest disadvantage is coming to Manhattan?
I mean, you guys invited me on the podcast, so I'm going to be tongue-in-cheek here a little bit more and say it. I think the one advantage we have is disguising our defensive well enough to have some of that bend, don't break mentality. Really stopping you guys. You guys scored 9 points against BYU. I just didn't think BYU's defense was that good. Now, also, they scored – their defense versus how many points they scored is a totally different conversation. The points BYU scored and the way they scored it is something that would not worry me as a K-State fan of your defense. But like your offense only put up 9 points. I think that's where we can have a kind of a key to the victory there. I mean, our defense might be able to hold you guys to a really few amount of points. When we held Utah with the backup quarterback to 22 at home, so maybe I'm talking about my ass here, but I as an Oklahoma State fan, of course, hopefully I'm not. Hopefully our defense is the one thing I can kind of go, you know what, we can kind of grind out some games. If you look back last year when Ollie Gordon was really making a dent and really putting a name for himself, it was not the first 4 games of the season. It was still kind of a running back by committee. And later on the season as it got, Ollie Gordon kind of started blossoming, and our defense held other teams to a low amount of points, and we started being able to have success running the ball and bleeding the clock. So I think that's the way we got to try to win this game. I don't know whose lines are going to be better. I think that's going to come down to a lot of this.
All right, hit us with the final score prediction. We'll give ours as well, and then we'll get out of here.
All right. Well, anyone who knows I'm an Oklahoma State fan, and I've been one since, I mean, I was still at one point I was wearing the blue jacket to Lewis Field with the band on the field. That's a very memorable photo my parents have. By the blue jacket, I mean that's how young I was. That like you weren't buying OSU gear because you were just growing so quickly, So it's buying OSU hat, but maybe a shirt or jersey. It wasn't a full-on parka that I was buying because it's still that young. So I'm definitely picking OSU. I'm picking the Pokes. At the end of the day, I think this one has to be a little bit higher scoring than I would want it to be just for us to win. With that being said, I think it's a very slim margin. I mean, I'm going to say at the end of the day, it's 35-31 Oklahoma State. And yeah, that's not the spread. That's not anything to go off of besides just really heart and hope at this point.
I mean, I can go. So in the past 10 years, this game, if K-State wins this game in Manhattan, it's a huge score discrepancy. Obviously 2 years ago, we won by 48 points. The win before that in 2018, we won by 19. In 2014, we won by 34. If K-State's going to win this game, somehow it always turns out to where it's, a huge margin. I think these teams are so evenly matched that I would be shocked if there was a margin in the double digits for a winner. I am going to pick K-State. I'm going to go 28-24. This is going to require K-State to finish drives in the end zone, which is who knows these days if that's going to happen. But I just think these teams are very evenly matched. Home field is going to really play a huge part in this game. I'm excited. It's going to be a fun one.
Chef, hit it.
Yeah, I'm not feeling great. I'm gonna be honest. I'm not feeling good. BYU really put a damper on how I look at this team. Red zone, you brought up the stats, Bob. They're really holding teams when they get down to the red zone, and they might give up big plays in between the 40s or whatever, and however that works. But once teams get down to the red zone, they're not scoring. I'm not feeling great about this game, especially how the BYU one looked. I got it 35-28 Pokes. It's I'm not feeling good. If I get proven wrong, I'm a win either way. So, yeah.
I don't know what that noise was, but I'm gonna go ahead and go.
Was that from me?
I don't know. I'm gonna go 30.
Wait, did you guys not hear the applause after Chef said Oklahoma State's going to win?
Is
that what that was?
I thought it was a vacuum cleaner.
Might be a little Atlanta Falcons-ish, but I can pump it in myself here if needed.
It sounded like a water fountain. I don't know. It was very strange.
Okay.
It sounded like running water. I'm gonna go Cats 30-24. I do not think the last line I saw was 4.5. I don't think the Cats are gonna. I do think the Cats are gonna cover, but it's gonna be really, really damn close. And I think coming out of this past week against BYU, offense and defense, they're going to have to make a lot of adjustments to figure stuff out. But I do feel confident that the coaching staff can at least get them to lock in for this week in a big matchup against an important team that we really need to show up for. But that's my prediction: 30-24 Cats. Cal, thanks a ton again for joining us today. Helping us preview the Cowboys. Let the Cokeheads know where they can find you, and we'll plug whatever you want. Big 12 Huddle, all the things.
Yeah, so going live tonight with Roger from the UCF podcast, the Big 12 Huddle at 9, and then got you guys joining here the show for the CGA tour on YouTube, Spotify, iTunes, wherever you listen to podcasts, 10 separate platforms. Of course, thecollegehuddle.com as well too. And got you guys joining here later on tonight for about 30 minutes. So thanks so much for having me on, and go share some love on the CGA tour, definitely for Cocaine Willie, because you guys, for whatever reason, all my YouTube comments are the away fans just chiming in. So
same here.
Keep going for it, but I don't know what's going on there. Hopefully, maybe some Oklahoma State fans will come join the CGA tour. Subscribe button there, because if you guys get away fans, then hopefully I can direct some of the away fans to you guys too. We'll see.
Absolutely. And direct those away fans to Annie Mae's Parlor as well. Pick up your Pat's Beef Jerky at the Fridge Liquor Store in Manhattan. So shout out to those two sponsors. Again, patsbeefjerky.com. You can use the promo code CATS for 10% off of your next order. And they've shipped to all 50 states of the great United States of America. So they can ship anywhere, regardless of where you're located. Additionally, we are the K-State representative on the College Huddle, and Cal, obviously the CGA Tour, is the Oklahoma State representative of the College Huddle, which is the largest community of fan-driven content in the nation. So be sure to check out the College Huddle at thecollegehuddle.com and follow them on social media at College Huddle. They're pumping out all sorts of content. It's stuff from us. We're all collaborating together, so it's been super fun to be involved with that. Last but not least, you can follow our show at Cocaine Willie on YouTube, TikTok, Twitter, or Instagram, or follow us individually. I'm at Bob Trollsby. Chef is at Chef Andre Napier, and Fireball Matt is at Matt Marchesini. Chef.
Cocaine's a hell of a drug, baby.
We're all coke and no joke. Wildcat country. Let's freaking not lose.
Let's
Right, man.
score more than 9 points. Please.
Good luck.
Praise Jesus.